What is British culture? Now, aside from the obvious question of which is the best country in the world, and if you haven't watched any of my videos, then you may not know the answer to this, but just in case you were in any doubt as to the best country in the world, it is England. England is the best country in the world. It's always been the best country in the world, and it shall ever be the best country in the world. No matter what happens to it, it will always be where my heart lies. In country terms, that would be an easy way to put it, but if you were to say it directly, you should be proud of that point. What's the best country in the world? Well, that be England. Can we move on now? And it's as straightforward as that. But what is British culture? Well, British culture is something that is different to that answer. And British culture itself is very, very hard to pin down in some respects if you haven't had a good think about it. And I came across this clip with Ben Kentish from LBC, where a gentleman called in and he had a good crack at Ben on the topic of multiculturalism. And I thought it was very interesting. And Ben ended up countering the argument, because he does, I believe, tend to take the opposing side. He ended up countering that whole argument with, "OK then, mate, what is British culture?"
Hi, Paul.
Hello there. Right, I've got to say, I think we have to nail this nonsense about multiculturalism once and for all.
Go on.
I love going to different countries and I love imbuing myself in a culture in another country. But the idea is, for instance, I'm not knocking any particular country, that the idea Somalian culture somehow enriches our country is rubbish. I mean, please tell me yourself. You tell me, what is Somalian culture? You tell me how it's enriched our country.
Well, it's not fair to pick one, Paul. I mean, you could...
All right, Syrian. Tell me how Syrian
What about Italian?
Is. But, no.
Do you like pizza?
Okay. Yeah, but
like a pasta?
Hang on. Well, hang on. That's
like
what I was going to come to. One of the cultures that we're most imbued with is ancient Greek culture. We didn't need the ancient Greeks to come over in boats to take on their culture. What we do as a good culture is we look around the world, we see those bits from cultures that we like to take, which we did with ancient Greek culture, and we take it on. We can take on spaghetti and bolognese and curries without necessarily having to have the people live amongst us. But I'm still going to go back to my answer, because we have lots of Somalians and Syrians and Egyptians. I bet you can't tell me what one of their cultures is and how it's affected ours. Please, come on, Somalian, Egyptian, Syrian, Ethiopian.
Well, I think it's about all of them. I don't think
You're evading.
I'm not at all, Paul. I just don't think you can.
Somalians live in London. Please tell me what their culture is. Tell me what it is.
Why are you picking on Somalians?
Are you saying that you can't tell me what Somalian culture is?
What? Why are you asking about one specific one?
Do you know what Somalian culture is?
Not particularly. I don't know that many Somalian people. How
do you know whether it enriches? And if you don't know what it is, how do you know if it enriches our culture?
Because I'm talking about the whole mix of cultures. I'm not talking about one or two.
I'm willing to take a few. Tell me about Syrian culture. What is Syrian culture?
Why are you picking certain countries?
Because I'm showing that you're talking nonsense. People talk about multiculturalism. They haven't even an idea of what the culture of half these countries. That's one part. The second part is they can't even say how it enriches their own. I could put 20 countries with you. I guarantee I could ask you what their culture is and you wouldn't have a clue.
What about the people from those cultures that are keeping the NHS running right now?
Hang on. We're talking about multiculturalism. We're not talking about them working, okay? We're talking about multiculturalism.
But they go together,
don't change the argument.
I'm not.
Please tell me about Afghani culture.
Paul, I'm not changing the argument because they go hand in hand. You can't have people coming here as migrants to work and say, well, actually, you can't bring any of your culture with you. You can't bring your food or your language or your religion or your faith or your way of looking the world with you. They're two sides of the same coin. And if you accept that we need people coming here to work in jobs like care or the NHS or wherever it may be, then you also have to accept that that's going to come with multiculturalism.
But you were talking about the benefits of multiculturalism.
Yeah, but I've just given you.
Right. Can you tell me about Afghan culture, apart from stoning their women to death? Can you tell me about Afghan culture?
What about the Afghans working in the NHS, for example?
No, tell me about the culture. You're trying to evade the whole discussion.
Paul, you're missing the point that I'm putting.
Your discussion was the benefits of multiculturalism.
It was about diversity.
And I'm saying there are no benefits.
It's about. So you don't think all the people who come here as immigrants to work in the NHS is a benefit of diversity?
It's not a benefit of their culture, is it?
Well, because they go hand in hand.
No, it might work better if maybe we said give up your culture, whatever it is, and take ours on. But we don't seem to be willing to do that. And the thing is,
why should they give up their culture? They're coming here to look after our elderly or work night shifts in our hospitals, and you want them to change the way they speak or what they watch on TV or what they eat.
And that would be nice. That would be nice. You just take
Why
that
would that
part
be
of it.
nice?
Hang on. Yes, that would be nice.
Why?
If there was the same culture as ours. But the thing is,
right. So if you come
they
here
have
from
different
Somalia,
cultures.
to take your example, to work as a nurse in the NHS, you can only eat fish and chips and bangers and mash.
No, absolutely
so
not.
So why do you want them to give up their
no,
own culture?
I'm not. No, well, you can't even tell me what their culture is. What is their culture?
Why do you want them to give it up, Paul?
What you're trying to do, you're trying to divert the answer.
I'm really not. I'm asking you a very, very simple question, following up what you said, which is it would be nice if they left their cultures behind. And I'm just asking why you think it would be a good thing.
I think it would be a good thing because we need to amalgamate, really more or less, or coalesce under sort of one particular culture.
What's British
culture? We don't do that. Sorry?
What's British culture?
Well, you know what they say, if you have to ask the question, you don't know the answer.
Well, you asked me about Somalian culture. What do you think British culture? All right, well, you do better than me then. What's British culture?
You answer me about Somalian culture, and I'll tell you about British
culture. But you're
culture.
British, Paul. I'm not Somalian. So it's a bit unfair, isn't it?
No, but you like the idea of all these. You said multiculturalism.
Yeah, but all right. So
you can't name one culture.
Paul, you're telling me that you want more people to adopt our culture. What is it?
Okay then, Ben, let me take that on for you. I think sometimes when you're looking at any answer to any question, it can sometimes be helpful just to immediately take the opposing side of that. And in this instance, the question that springs to my mind would be, okay then, so what isn't British culture? Can you give me an example of a picture or a video within this country that displays something that isn't British culture? And I've got a few examples lined up here for you.
Everyone is here, my people. Alhamdulillah. Have a look. 360 degrees. All you can see is the mandem, the brothers. We're located and we are here.
There's all peaceful people speaking.
And I think you would have to agree with me that none of that looks like British culture, and the reason why none of that looks like British culture is because it isn't. Generally speaking, people from Britain, in my experience, don't like to mimic ritual bloodletting in the streets because that's a preparation for some historical battle. That's not what we tend to do in England anyway, in my experience. Of course, recently speaking, that all seems to have changed now that we've let in 6.5 million people over the last decade or so who appear to have a completely different idea about how to live British life than normal British people, but that's a video for another day. But on to specifically what is British culture, and this is a question that Ben threw at this man, and the man started to flounder a little bit, and of course Ben then realised he was onto something, and then he dug his heels in the ground and he positioned it in that way. And fair enough, you know, Ben is allowed to argue his point. That is the meaning of the radio station that he has, or the radio show that he has, and he's quite within his rights to do that if he's debating with people. But I do have an answer for Ben today, as you might guess. But first of all, I did want to make something abundantly clear to you about the generalised way that people feel the need to answer questions related to these things that matter to us. Now, in the modern day, often there's an abandonment of instinct. Now, I believe instinct to be extremely important. You have an inbuilt knowledge of what's right and wrong, which has been put there over many, many generations. It's kind of bred into you through heritage. And often in Western civilization, we do feel a need to explain ourselves. Now, this is actually a unique philosophy related to Western democracies, where we feel the need that if we're going to have a certain belief system, then we should really be able to defend that, and we should be able to debate that, and we should be able to put that across to people when asked. And if you can't do that, then what you feel deep inside your heart and your soul isn't really valid, and so you should just abandon it, because if you can't explain it, you should get rid of it. But of course, this is one of the unique parts to Western culture. It's not unique to Eastern philosophy. In the East, they, a lot of the time, can be quite happy with just an answer. There's my answer, and people tend to move on, whereas we like to dissect and use the Socratic method. And whilst all that is very, very nice and very, very, interesting and a good way to deal with it, you have to bear in mind sometimes that you don't always have to have an answer. The answer can be, that's my answer, and that's the end of it, my friend, and you can finish that with an expletive if you so wish to. That would be on you. But for the purposes of describing how you feel, we have abandoned instinct. An instinct can roar at you sometimes. When I was playing you those videos before about, Islamism on the streets of Britain, I would like to ask you the question, was your instinct telling you something there? And the feelings that you were feeling when you were watching that were all correct. You knew that was wrong. You knew it was worrying. It can sometimes be hard to, describe in detail what that is, but you don't have to worry about that too much, in all honesty, because in many respects, your instinct tells you that that's wrong. You know it's wrong. You look at that and you go, right, this isn't right. And you can then go away and you can write down on pieces of paper. You can think about it while you sit at the top of the hill under an apple tree. You can do whatever you want to do. But you knew, balls to bone, that what you were looking at there was not right. And in thinking that, you were correct, because it wasn't right. That wasn't Britain. And you don't need to describe it. You don't need to go any further than that if pressed and if you've got nothing else there, because you know. And instinct tells you, and we have abandoned instinct at our peril. It's something that we've used through evolutionary biology for a number of millennia, where we can kind of scan our civilizations and look at, look down the road and wait for predators, etc. This stuff is inbuilt, and of course the tribal mechanism within people, within our humanity, tells us that what you were looking at there was not correct. And in that, you were 100% right. It wasn't correct. But to move on to the actual question, what is British culture? Well, I'm going to give you a few ideas, and you could think of these yourself as well. But this is just a short list. But there are many, many other things that you would have to look at in order to fully define it. But just for the purposes of this, here it is. So the first thing that's, I would say, unique to British culture is our monarchy. Now, you could go back a millennia, unlike a lot of countries around the world, and they don't have the history that our Isles have. And I read A History of Britain by Simon Sharma recently, and I found it very, very interesting. When you actually go back 1,000 years, we still have those stories. We still know what went on, and we have a very deep and rich history within our Isles of the monarchy and all the stuff that went on. I mean, they were kind of killing each other and poisoning their brothers and sisters, and killing their kids, and all sorts of stuff went on. But regardless of that, it is a very, very rich tapestry of history. You can go back, and we even can list, battles 1066 and all of that. That's our history. And the monarchy and, the general depth of history, I find astounding in Britain. And it is, one of the oldest countries in the world in that respect for our history. I mean, obviously every country's been there as long as every other country, but to trace our lineage back and to go back to the kings and queens of old, I think, is something that's very, very unique. Certainly America doesn't have it, but Britain does. Now, to move on to British humour, we do have a specific sense of humour in Britain, and what it is it's a kind of a very dry humour. I think British humour is dry, and it is specific to our country. Yes, all countries have their own version of humour, and it's all based upon different social mechanisms. But generally speaking, the British humour is something that's dry and self-deprecating. We are good at sarcasm as well. And generally speaking, I find the British sense of self-deprecation to be that the British are quite happy to laugh at themselves. You know, to take the pay out of yourself before other people. And I find that to be a very British trait within itself. And of course, the other things that you can think about is tea. You know, around the world, people do think that we have China cups and cups and saucers and all of that. And, you know, that is, to all intents and purposes, true. We love a good cup of tea, a good cuppa. In England, we like to dunk our biscuits as well. And all of that, you know, the British tea, and high tea, in fact, we have. You can go down London, you can have a very, very posh tea, or, you know, into one of these olden houses around the country, and you can enjoy a high tea, you know, with the cucumber sandwiches and the nice fairy cakes, etc. And all of that stuff goes on, and that is uniquely British, I feel. In Britain, I do find as well that we are extremely polite and reserved. Now, I've been to America a number of times, and I go over there, and when I go over there, I am struck by how reserved I am with regard to the Americans. The Americans are very brash, and I like Americans. I think they're funny. But when you actually compare the British with the American, I think you would easily see that we are very, very polite and reserved. And of course, you know, you will have seen the videos online of how people queue, you know, when they are getting on a bus.
Mr. Sadiq Khan, see the situation of TFL. This is bus stop, Reslip, Lido, hashtag green bus, and this is the situation of public.
Can you give respect to old ladies?
What TFL is doing, sorry to say.
Amma jagrata card unna? Ekku amma.
So Mr. Sadiq Khan, can we ask you why is this
Excuse me,
situation?
can you give place?
We observe the queuing, obsession. We are very disciplined where queuing's concerned, and I don't think a lot of cultures understand this. And you can go around the world and you can observe this, and when you come back to Britain, you will understand in every way that we are very, very good at queuing. In fact, you could even say that we hold queuing to be something that is sacred to ourselves. You know, we're not going to go and push in front of anybody because that just wouldn't do, would it? To move on to pub life, I think pub life is something that's very, very important also. You know, having a pint, having a chat. We are as well in Britain specifically allowed to talk about politics, to talk about, you know, football, to talk about philosophy generally. And these things do tend to happen over a pint of beer, in most respects anyway. I know some people do enjoy other tipples, but generally speaking, the pint in a traditional English pub is something that is completely unique to British culture. And what is our sport? Well, one of the things unique to Britain is our obsession with football. We love football, we love everything about football, the tribal identities, and it is, you know, to want of a better word, the Prozac for the masses, if that's a nice way to categorise it. And we love a bit of football, and that's our national sport. And I think that's unique, and I think sport can be unique to a certain country. Not all countries are into football. Some people, you know, you may go to India, for instance, and they like a bit of cricket, etc. So that is completely different. So sport per country is viewed upon in a different way. We are also in this country imbued with a sense of class, a class consciousness, and this is what you might term as the invisible backbone of British society. We've got different accents, and you can be a very posh person, or you may not be a very posh person. You may decide to speak with a proper Geordie accent, as I do most of the time. I'm probably somewhere in the middle of that. You could call me a posh Geordie if that's how you want to categorise me, but regardless of what it is, accents are very, very British as well, and it is a definer of class, I feel. Postcodes do define status, as it were, and we understand a sense of class. We've got the working class, middle class, and even upper class, and even though the middle class is being slowly erased at the moment, we're all blending into one blob at the bottom. I suppose you could say we also have an underclass of people who don't really represent the working class, but that's an argument for another day. But English people, British people, they understand the class system. And that is another way to look at it in other places as well. For instance, I have been to India, and I can tell you that they operate a caste system. And, people with pens in their pockets, they can read and write, and that's why people walk around with pens in their pockets. And that denotes a higher caste. I gather from what I was told when I was over there that because I was a white person in India, then that immediately put me above certain people within the country in caste terms, but below others, strangely enough. And I found this to be fascinating during the time that I spent over there. Another thing that we can categorise as being uniquely British is the weather. We like to talk about the weather because the weather's generally awful. There's a running joke about, is it raining today, etc., etc. I think as well that in Britain we have kind of 3 weeks of nice weather, and the rest of the time we're kind of moaning about it, and I find that to be uniquely British. And we do have conversations about the weather as well, and that's kind of integrated within our small talk. And heritage, tradition, just to finish off on, there's a deep heritage within our country, deep tradition. And, you can talk about Shakespeare, you can talk about fish and chips, Remembrance Day, roast dinners, Christmas Day, how you look at somebody in the street, when you smile at somebody, how you walk around and do your business, how you speak to people generally, how you treat people, what is the core basis of your being. I hope I've hammered this nail in enough times now. Our culture is unique to Britain, and in my mind, it's the best culture. And if you want to come here, you want to come and live in my country, fine. You come over here and you contribute to society. I don't care about the colour of your skin. What I care about is you come over here and you integrate into British society and you adopt our culture. Yes, I want you to adopt our culture. No, I don't want you to bring your culture across here and set up enclaves within my society, because that's just not British. Do I want to remain British? Do I like the sense of Britishness in my country? Of course I like the sense of Britishness in my country, because it's the best culture in the world. It always has been and always will be in my mind. England is the best country, and British culture is the best culture in the world forever and ever and ever. Thanks very much for your time.